If you're ready to dive into a galaxy where power is measured not by armies, but by the things they fear, then buckle up. If stories of humanity defying the impossible get your blood pumping, make sure to like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more HFY tales every week. Now let's begin. The Elder Citadel floated above a dead star, a fortress carved from the bones of a supernova. Inside its silent halls, where gravity bent to the will of its architects, the galaxy's most ancient rulers gathered. 9 elder races, creatures who had shaped the laws of conquest long before humanity learned to build fire, stared at the projection hovering above their council table. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't a fleet. It was a single living creature. Karath. A shadow carved from muscle and spines, plated hide reflecting the cold light like armor grown from a nightmare. Its pulse alone could shatter sensors. Its breath melted cryo-ice. Entire civilizations had fallen when it appeared on their worlds, silent as a storm. And yet today it was prey. The apex has crossed into our borders again, hissed Archon Vale of the Keth. His voice was smooth, polished, like silk stretched over a knife. This time we will not chase. We will cage it. The others nodded, some in arrogance, some in quiet dread. The Karath had evaded every trap laid in centuries. They called it the silent cataclysm. But the elders had built something new, a cage woven of gravimetric fields and neural dampeners. If they succeeded, their control would be absolute. And in the back of the chamber, standing as an observer rather than a voice, was Captain Elias Ward. He didn't belong here. The elders made sure he felt it. A human, short-lived, genetically unimpressive, a newcomer to the stars, had no place in the affairs of Titans. But humans were useful in ways that unsettled the galaxy. They were adaptable, unpredictable. And Elias, a decorated scout commander, had a reputation for surviving things that should have killed him. Human, Vale called, not bothering with his name. You've hunted beasts on your barren world. Tell me, do you fear it? Elias looked up at the shifting projection. The predator's massive form rippled with quiet menace, each movement fluid, deliberate. It wasn't mindless. That was what disturbed him most. Yes, he answered simply. The room hummed with amusement. Some of the elders made clicking noises, their version of laughter. Elias didn't care. Fear wasn't weakness. Fear was information. Good, Vale purred. Then you understand why this experiment must not fail. Outside the citadel, fleets gathered like a storm front. Hundreds of ships, bristling with weapons designed to trap, not kill. Karath had been sighted on a desolate jungle moon at the edge of known space. A single world would now host the hunt of the millennium. Elias stood on the observation deck of the command ship as the moon grew in the viewport. It was a scarred world, broken by tectonic upheaval, shrouded in mist that swallowed radar. Perfect ground for a hunter that lived to make armies disappear. You shouldn't be here, human, muttered a voice behind him. One of the Zarians, thin, silver-skinned, their faces half bone, half mask. When the beast comes, it won't care what you are. Elias smirked faintly without turning. Then I'll make sure it notices me last. The shuttle descended through choking clouds, landing near a ravine where scouts had found claw marks, 3 meters deep, fused into stone like wax. The Elder Strike teams moved like shadows, each step accompanied by drones and shimmering fields. Elias followed, rifle slung but safety on. He wasn't here to kill anything. He was here to see. The jungle didn't sing. It breathed. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of decomposing flora. Every sound was distant, smothered, as though the world itself feared to make noise. Even the Zarian soldiers grew uneasy. Predators didn't roar here. They simply arrived. Movement, north quadrant, whispered one of the scouts. Red markers flared on the visors. Something huge was watching them. The first trap was triggered, a cascade of gravimetric pulses meant to disrupt muscle control. But the readings spiked and then vanished, as if the Karath had never been there. Then came the silence. Elias froze. It wasn't absence of sound, it was the kind of silence that pressed on your lungs, warning you that something was now behind you. He turned slowly. He didn't see it at first. He felt it. The predator stepped out of the mist. It was enormous, taller than any elder soldier, its hide a tapestry of scars and bioluminescent veins that pulsed like slow lightning. 4 black eyes fixed on the hunting party. Its breath came in measured exhales that misted the air like smoke from a forge. Every elder raised their weapons, shields humming to life. Elias's fingers twitched over his trigger but didn't pull. He didn't know why. The Karath tilted its head. Not like an animal sizing up prey. More like a soldier assessing a battlefield. It glanced over the strike team, then fixed on him. Not the strongest. Not the armed. Him. The moment stretched. Elias's heartbeat roared in his ears. The predator's chest expanded. A low, resonant growl rolled across the jungle like distant thunder. Then it moved, but not toward him. A blur of shadow. Screams. An elder soldier disappeared into the fog with a sound that didn't sound like death. It sounded like erasure. Blasts lit the jungle, slicing through empty air. Karath was already gone. Not retreating. Relocating. Regroup. Now, barked the Zarian commander. Panic was buried beneath layers of discipline, but Elias heard it anyway. Branches snapped overhead. A shape flickered through the canopy, too fast for the eye. Elias raised his rifle instinctively, searching for movement. For a second, a breath, the predator was in front of him again. It didn't strike. Just watched. And in that strange, electrified moment, Elias felt something colder than fear, recognition. Then the beast melted back into the mist, silent as the dark between stars. When the survivors reached the shuttle, half their number was missing. The jungle was eerily untouched, as though it had simply decided to reclaim what belonged to it. The elders barked orders, their arrogance cracking at the edges. This was supposed to be their triumph. Elias said nothing as they lifted off. He glanced out the viewport one last time at the shifting fog below. Somewhere down there, Karath was moving, watching. And though he didn't know why, Elias felt certain it wasn't finished with him. The containment chamber was built to hold gods. At least, that was what the elders told themselves. It was a perfect prism of energy and alloy, suspended in the core of the citadel like an insect trapped in glass. Karath lay at its center, shackled by invisible fields, each one tuned to a frequency designed to break titans. The predator's massive form was coiled like a storm restrained, every slow breath a reminder that what they'd caught wasn't just a beast, it was something that had never been caged before. Captain Elias Ward stood at the perimeter, separated by 6 layers of shielding. The room hummed with static, each sound sharp against the silence that came from the creature inside. It had been unconscious when they brought it in. Now its 4 black eyes were open. They didn't blink. They didn't dart. They stared directly at him. He told himself it was coincidence. Predators tracked movement, heat, vulnerability. But something in the way its gaze followed him, unwavering, precise, made him feel less like prey and more like a piece on a board it already understood. "You're too close, human," hissed the Zarian commander, stepping up beside him. Her pale skin shimmered beneath the cold light, her armor polished like bone. "It reacts unpredictably to lower species proximity." Elias didn't move. "Unpredictably? It calms." Her voice sharpened like broken glass. "That's a problem." Inside the chamber, Karath flexed its forelimbs against the energy bindings. The restraints didn't move, but the air vibrated as if space itself was flinching. Several elder scientists flinched too, though they tried not to. No one wanted to admit they were afraid. Archon Vale's hologram crackled to life above the chamber, his serpentine features flickering in the blue glow. "Begin the neural dampener sequence," he ordered, his voice smooth as oil. "Let us see if the legends bleed." A low hum filled the room. Arcs of light rippled across the predator's back as invisible current laced through its body. It didn't scream. It didn't thrash. It simply stared at Elias as the dampeners dug into its nervous system. And then, in a voice too deep to be sound, Elias felt something pulse through the room. Not a word. Not language. A pressure, directed at him alone. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. Recognition. His hand tightened on the railing before he even realized it. For a brief, impossible second, it felt like the predator's heartbeat had synced with his. "Increase the voltage," Vale commanded. "Do not let it acclimate." The creature's muscles tensed, cords standing out beneath armor like hide. A shudder ran through the chamber as one of the inner restraint fields buckled, just a fraction. Warning alarms chirped softly, almost embarrassed. The elders scrambled to reinforce the barrier. Elias didn't flinch. Karatha's eyes narrowed slightly, not in pain but in calculation. Vale's projection flickered, a faint smile stretching across his angular face. "Magnificent. Imagine what it will do once the collar is complete. Whole fleets will fall before it. And it will obey." The Zarian commander inclined her head. "If it obeys." "It will," Vale replied smoothly. "Everything breaks." The predator's gaze flicked away from Elias for the first time, toward the Archon's hologram. The air seemed to dip a degree colder. For all their confidence, none of the elders stepped closer. Elias turned and started toward the observation exit. He didn't want to see the rest. But just before the door hissed open, the hum in the room changed. It wasn't the machines. It was the creature. A low, resonant sound filled the chamber. Not a roar, not a growl, something deeper, like the world beneath the world rumbling awake. The elders froze. The predator had spoken in a language older than anything on their charts. Not a single one of them understood the meaning. But Elias did. Not the words but the weight. The sound crawled into his chest and anchored itself there. A promise? Or a warning? He spent the next hours walking the perimeter corridors, trying to shake the sensation. The citadel was a labyrinth of glass and bone, where every hallway felt like a whispering throat. Above him, elder fleets celebrated the capture. The hunt was already being spun into legend. They would broadcast the footage across the galaxy, the day the apex bent the knee. Fear neatly packaged into reassurance. He found himself back at the chamber. He shouldn't have. No one had summoned him. The guards glanced at him with mild contempt but said nothing. Humans were beneath notice unless they were inconvenient. Inside, the lights were dimmed. The creature was alone, suspended in the void of its cell. It was no longer restrained by physical clamps. Those had proven unnecessary. The energy fields had been tuned so precisely that the very air around it was heavy enough to keep a mountain pinned. And yet Karath wasn't struggling. Was waiting. Elias moved closer to the observation window almost against his will. His breath fogged the glass. The predator turned its head as though it had felt him coming long before he arrived. Their eyes locked again and the world outside the chamber dimmed. For a moment the citadel seemed far away. The fleet, the council, the endless wars, they all receded like background noise. It blinked once. A slow, deliberate movement. As if acknowledging him. He stepped back, heart hammering. He had never heard of the Karath showing anything but bloodlust. It was said to be a living extinction event, not a thinking mind. But the look in its eyes wasn't hunger. It was focus. The door behind him hissed open. Vale emerged from the corridor, robes trailing like ink. Ah, human. Elias stiffened slightly. Sir. Fascinating, isn't it? Vale's gaze slid past him, lingering on the predator. It looks at you differently. As if you matter. Elias didn't answer. Vale's smile deepened, all teeth. We will learn why. If there is a weakness to be extracted, it will serve us well. He turned and left, his presence trailing menace like smoke. Elias remained, alone with the beast separated by fields of light. The hum of the dampeners filled the chamber like distant thunder. Karath tilted its head again the way it had on the jungle moon. And slowly, deliberately, it lowered its massive form until it sat, not like a trapped thing, but like a warrior at rest, waiting for a move only it could see coming. Elias swallowed. The council thought they'd won. They thought they'd broken the unbreakable. But standing there in the cold light of the observation deck, Elias understood something none of them did. Karath wasn't defeated. It was watching. And for some reason he couldn't explain, it was watching him. The alarm began as a distant pulse, a low rhythmic beat that barely registered against the citadel's constant mechanical thrum. Then it grew louder, sharper, until it wasn't a sound at all but a pressure beneath the skin, a tremor in the bones. Elias Ward was halfway through a report when the command deck's lights dimmed, and every elder present turned their heads toward the central spire. The Karatha's chamber. Someone had triggered an emergency protocol that had never been used before. Vale's image flickered onto every surface like a ghost. His expression, usually carved in polished confidence, was stretched tight. Containment breach. All units to Sector 9. The corridors erupted in motion. Elder soldiers moved like a single organism, their armored limbs clattering with the precision of predators who believed themselves untouchable. Elias fell in behind them, his boots slamming against the alloy floor. He wasn't supposed to be part of containment operations. But something in the pitch of that alarm pulled him forward, as though the sound was calling him personally. Sector 9 was a wound carved into the citadel's underbelly. The moment he arrived, the air changed. The temperature had dropped by at least 10 degrees. Frost clung to the walls. Several containment drones lay scattered across the floor, their casings peeled open from the inside. Not torn. But as if something had studied their structure and then dismantled them. The predator was awake. Vale materialized at the head of the squad, his holographic form crackling from signal interference. Do not hesitate, he hissed. The dampeners must hold. If they fail, we kill it. One of the Zarian troopers knelt to check a console. The inner fields are gone. It overloaded them with feedback. That shouldn't be possible. It wasn't supposed to exist, Vale snapped. The access doors to the chamber stood ahead, warped from the inside. Elias caught the faint shimmer of energy through the cracks. The Karath hadn't just broken free, it had rewritten the rules of the cage. A roar rolled through the corridors like a storm breaking against a cliff, deep enough to shake the marrow in his bones. It wasn't a cry of rage. It was a declaration. When the doors gave way, the world narrowed. Karath stood in the center of what had once been its prison. Energy fields sputtered and spat useless sparks around it, as if unwilling to accept their own failure. It towered over the squad, plates of dark hide glistening in the flickering light. His breathing was steady, controlled. It had not fled. It had waited. The soldiers raised their weapons. The air thickened, a taut string ready to snap. Elias stepped forward before he could think better of it. He should have stayed behind the firing line. He should have followed the chain of command. But the creature's gaze locked on him instantly, just as it had in the jungle, just as it had through the glass. There was no rage in those black eyes. Only precision. One of the troopers fired. The energy blast hit the predator square in the chest. It staggered half a step, then straightened, the burned flesh already knitting itself back together. Another shot rang out and then another. The chamber filled with the staccato of plasma. Karath didn't run. It moved through the fire like a tide through smoke. 2 soldiers went down before anyone realized it had crossed the distance. Elias dropped to one knee, instinct more than thought. The predator's movements were deliberate, never wasted. Every strike was silent, efficient. It wasn't killing to escape. It was disabling what stood between it and freedom. Fire everything. Vale roared. Ceiling turrets descended, bathing the chamber in blinding light. The air screamed with energy discharge. Karath slammed one clawed hand into the deck and vaulted upward, tearing a turret from its housing in a shower of sparks. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Elias ran. Not away. Forward. Through the chaos he saw it. A containment override panel left open by the fleeing technicians. The Elders planned to vent the entire sector into space, killing everything inside. The Predator. The soldiers. Him. If they couldn't control the apex, they'd erase the problem. He reached the panel as Vale's voice cut through the comm. Purge sequence initiated. 60 seconds. Karath turned toward him. The fighting paused as if the room itself recognized a shift. Elias stared back at the creature, every instinct screaming at him to run. But he didn't. He punched in manual overrides, rerouting the sequence to delay the purge. A strange stillness filled the chamber. Karath's breath steamed the air. Its head tilted just slightly. For a heartbeat, the predator and the human existed outside the war that surrounded them. It didn't attack. It stepped toward him. Ward, a trooper screamed somewhere behind him. Move. The predator closed the distance in 3 strides. Elias didn't raise his weapon. A single clawed hand slammed into the floor beside him, not to crush but to anchor. A blast from the turret streaked toward him, and before he could react, the creature's body twisted, massive shoulder plates intercepting the strike. The impact sent a shockwave through the room. Karath roared, not in pain but in challenge. It had shielded him. Vale's image snapped into sharp clarity on the wall screen. Kill the human. The order was so sudden the soldiers hesitated, stunned. Then they turned. Elias saw it in their movements, obedience drilled too deep to question. His hand tightened on his sidearm, not at the creature but at his own kind. Karath moved faster. The first trooper never fired. The predator hit like gravity, a blur of dark muscle and white heat. 1 soldier. 2. The others scattered, but it didn't chase them. It positioned itself between Elias and the guns, a wall of living force. Elias shouted over the alarms, his voice raw. They're going to vent this sector. Whether Karath understood the words didn't matter. Its eyes narrowed and it slammed its claws into the central conduit. Sparks exploded. The purge countdown froze at 30 seconds. The hallway behind them erupted as reinforcements poured in. More soldiers. Heavier weapons. Elias didn't think. He ran toward the exit and the creature followed, not like a beast unleashed but like something making a choice. The corridors shook as explosions rippled through the lower decks. Karath's footfalls were silent beside him despite its size, a shadow bound to his steps. They burst through the last set of blast doors just as the sector seals collapsed behind them. Vacuum tore the chamber apart in a single deafening roar. Elias collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. Alarms wailed across the citadel. Somewhere above, fleets were scrambling. He glanced sideways. Karath stood in the middle of the corridor, smoke clinging to its plated hide. Its breathing remained steady. Come. And for the first time, its posture wasn't the coiled tension of a cornered predator. It was facing forward. The Elder Council would hunt them both now. He didn't need Vale's voice to confirm it. But as the creature's black eyes met his once more, Elias felt something anchored deep inside him. He wasn't running from it anymore. They were running together. The outpost sat like a splinter in the void. Half buried in the bones of a forgotten Dyson structure, it had no name and no lights, just the soft hum of failing systems, echoing through cavernous, empty halls. Elias Ward dragged himself through a warped airlock, lungs burning with recycled air, blood drying on his collar. Behind him, Karath moved in silence, its bulk filling the corridor like living shadow. They had escaped the citadel, but the hunt had not ended. He leaned against a wall that flaked to powder at his touch. "We've got maybe an hour before they track the jump signature," he muttered, not expecting an answer. Karath tilted its head, the faint bioluminescence across its shoulders pulsing like an echo. It didn't understand language the way he did. It didn't need to. The outpost had been abandoned for centuries, built during the early expansion wars. Its halls were wide enough for transport mechs, its defense systems long corroded. It smelled of dust, rust, and quiet. Elias made his way toward a central operations bay, boot steps echoing. He was exhausted, but the adrenaline in his blood was sharp enough to keep him moving. Karath followed without hesitation, keeping a precise distance, close enough to shield, far enough not to corner. He stopped near a cracked console and pulled a half-functional display online. The Elder fleet had already deployed pursuit units. 3, maybe 4 hours at most. He should have felt panic. Instead, a strange clarity settled over him. Running was no longer enough. The predator lowered itself to the ground, one massive forearm braced, its breath slow and even. Up close, Elias could see details the Elders had ignored. Healed scars, deliberate symmetry in the plates of its hide, not the random chaos of a beast but the discipline of something that had survived more than war. It met his eyes without aggression. "You're not just muscle," Elias said softly. "You're planning something, aren't you?" Karatha's gaze flicked toward the ceiling, then the floor, as though mapping the entire outpost in an instant. It exhaled through rows of teeth, a sound like rolling stone. He didn't know what it meant, but it wasn't a threat. It was awareness. The console flickered again. A transmission pinged, a scrambled frequency. Human origin. Elias froze. Few humans were given access to Elder military channels, fewer still trusted to use them after siding with the Council. He opened the feed. A familiar voice crackled through static. "Ward. This is Commander Strake. You're being hunted by everything with a pulse. I can still get you out, if you stand down." Elias clenched his jaw. Strake had been his commanding officer once, back before humanity accepted its place under the Elder's shadow. "You're with them now?" "I'm alive," Strake replied coldly. "You should try it sometime. You've got something the Council wants and they'll burn Earth to ash to get it. Surrender the creature. We'll make this clean." Karatha's head lifted at the sound, nostrils flaring as if it could taste the voice. Elias glanced back at the creature. The Elders didn't just want it, they feared it. Enough to make allies out of former enemies. "Strake," Elias said, voice low. "This isn't a beast. It's not what they say it is." "Then it's worse," came the reply. "You've got 30 minutes before my strike team gets there." "I'm not asking again." The transmission cut. Elias stared at the dead console, pulse hammering. He had no fleet, no plan, no backup. Just a crumbling outpost and a creature the galaxy had tried to chain. And yet, when he turned to Karath, he didn't see defeat mirrored back at him. The predator was poised, shoulders rolled forward, claws sunk lightly into the deck, not from tension but readiness. He realized, with a strange sense of calm, that they were no longer just fugitives. They were a problem the galaxy couldn't ignore. The first strike came faster than expected. Explosions rippled through the outer ring of the outpost, lighting the night-black structure with short, blinding bursts. The Elder strike team moved like steel and smoke, precision-built hunters. Elias ducked behind a support beam as shrapnel tore through the room. Karath didn't flinch. It moved to the front, muscles tightening beneath its hide like drawn cables. Soldiers swarmed the main hall. They weren't aiming to negotiate. Energy bolts hissed through the air, carving trenches into the walls. Elias returned fire with clean, surgical bursts, never wasting a shot. Karath launched forward like a storm breaking loose. The first soldier vanished beneath a sweep of its claws. The second was hurled into the ceiling. The third dropped his weapon the moment the predator's roar shattered the air. It wasn't just volume. It was something older, A sound that rattled the spine, made the battlefield shift from confidence to survival. Elias kept moving, shooting only when necessary. Karath didn't kill everyone. It broke formations, forced retreats, tore gaps into the enemy's rhythm. For every step Elias took, the creature mirrored him. They weren't fighting as soldier and monster. They were moving like something that had already learned to trust the other. Through the chaos, Strake emerged, tall, lean, wrapped in the silver-black armor of elder loyalists. His rifle was steady. His eyes, colder than the space outside, fixed on Elias. "You've lost," he said. "Do you even know what you're protecting?" Elias didn't lower his weapon. "Do you?" Strake didn't hesitate. He fired. Elias dove behind a beam as the bolt cracked past his head, singing the air. Karath moved faster than thought, slamming into the floor and then up through the dust, a blur of movement too fast for human eyes. Strake squeezed the trigger again, but the predator was already in front of Elias, its armored flank catching the blast that would have cut him down. Elias didn't hear himself scream Strake's name. The world tilted. Karath rose to its full height, the glow beneath its hide burning brighter. The loyalist soldiers faltered. None of them had expected the apex to defend anything, least of all a human. Elias lunged for cover, rolling out as Karath collided with the squad like a force of nature. The air split with the sound of metal and bone breaking. The few remaining soldiers tried to retreat, but the creature didn't let them regroup. It was done running. Strake lay pinned beneath debris, staring up at the beast with disbelief curdling into fear. "They'll kill you," he spat at Elias. "They'll kill both of you." Elias stepped closer, rifle still in hand, though for once it felt unnecessary. "Then they'll have to try harder." Above them, through the broken ceiling of the outpost, elder ships began to descend, flooding the ruins with harsh light. Karath lifted its head toward the sky, shoulders squared. It no longer moved like prey. It stood like something ready to make a stand. The glow in its eyes burned brighter, reflecting the ships like a promise carved in shadow. Elias exhaled slowly. The fight was no longer just about survival. It was about what happened when a galaxy built on fear met something that refused to kneel. The ships drew closer, their engines screaming. The outpost trembled. Karath stepped forward until it was beside him, not in front of him, not behind. Beside. Elias felt the cold wind of open space slide through the cracks in the structure, carrying the scent of scorched metal and something electric in the air. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The light above the ruins sharpened to a blade. Engines howled as elder ships broke through the atmosphere-less void, converging like predators circling a wounded thing. Elias felt the tremors under his boots, steady, deliberate, the rhythm of war machines landing. Karath didn't flinch. The creature stood as if it had waited for this moment, like the stars themselves had dragged it here to end something old. He checked the charge on his rifle, 42 rounds. Nowhere near enough. The outpost wasn't a fortress, it was a tomb. But it wasn't the walls that would matter. It was what stood within them. Karath's head tilted toward him, a faint rumble in its chest. It wasn't speech, but Elias had learned its language through the way it moved. "Stay behind me," it seemed to say. But Elias stepped forward anyway. "No," he whispered. "We finish this together." The first wave came with surgical precision. Soldiers in chrome-black armor poured from the dropships, their boots striking the cracked surface in unison. Elder Command had sent more than a hunting party this time. They had sent a purge. At their center, beneath the glare of a command drone, stood High Warden Kale, a name whispered in every rebellion Elias had ever known. Tall, wrapped in a cold silver exosuit, Kale's mask reflected the world like polished bone. Kale's voice carried on the broadcast channel, smooth and inhumanly calm. "Elias Ward, you have something that belongs to the Council. Lay down your arms and the punishment will be swift. Resist and every trace of you will be erased." Elias didn't answer. Karath's eyes narrowed. The silence between them thickened until it wasn't silence at all, it was defiance. Kale raised one hand. "Fire." The world exploded. Elder rifles spat streams of blue fire, ripping into the ground. Karath leapt, landing with bone-shaking force, claws tearing into the earth. Its roar split the sky. Soldiers faltered, not because they hadn't seen it before, but because every story they'd ever been told about the apex said it could not be controlled. And yet here it was, not rampaging blindly but defending something. Someone. Elias dove through the chaos, firing tight bursts, aiming not to kill everyone but to break their formation. Karath tore through their front line with terrifying elegance. No wasted movement, no hesitation. One soldier went flying, another crumpled beneath a single strike. The predator was no longer hiding what it was. It moved like a storm that had learned how to aim. Kale stepped through the firefight, calm as glass. His exosuit flickered with energy, shielding him from stray bolts. His voice sliced through the comms. "You think that thing is your ally? It's a weapon. It was designed to end civilizations. It ended ours." Elias ducked behind a shattered pillar, breathing hard. "No," he muttered. "It survived yours." Kale fired a pulse that obliterated the pillar. Elias stumbled back, ribs aching, vision flaring white. Karath reacted instantly, interposing itself between him and the warden. The next pulse struck its armored chest, scattering sparks. The creature staggered but did not fall. The elder soldiers closed in, tightening their perimeter. Kale approached like a blade finding a throat. "Stand aside, human. That thing was never yours to keep." Elias rose slowly, blood drying against his jaw. "It's not theirs either." Kale's mask tilted. "Then it dies with you." He launched forward, faster than anything human. Karath met him mid-strike. The collision sent a shockwave rippling through the outpost, tearing chunks of debris into the void. Elias was thrown back, skidding across the cracked floor. Kale's blade sang through the air, colliding with Karath's claws in a shower of sparks. They moved like mirrored predators, one crafted by empire, one forged by survival. Elias forced himself up, blinking past the pain. Kale was fast, but Karath was relentless. Every strike the warden made was met, countered, answered. Still, Kale's suit gave him speed Karath couldn't match forever. He didn't have to win a war, he just had to land one killing blow. Elias saw it, the moment Kale feinted left and drove the blade low, aiming for the predator's exposed flank. He didn't think. He ran. He slammed into Kale's side, the blade grazing Karath's armor instead of piercing it. Kale turned, grabbed Elias by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You'd throw away your life for a monster?" Kale hissed. Elias clawed at the grip, air burning in his lungs. "No," he rasped. "For a friend." Karath's roar shook the chamber. It lunged, slamming into Kale with enough force to crack the ground. Elias fell hard, coughing, vision spinning. Kale staggered back, armor flickering. Karath didn't let him breathe. It struck again and again, not like a weapon but like something protecting its pack. Kale managed to land a blow, the blade cutting into Karath's shoulder. Black-red blood splattered across the deck. The creature didn't retreat. It stepped closer. Its bioluminescence flared, brighter than Elias had ever seen. It wasn't just rage. It was awakening. The elder soldiers hesitated. For centuries, they'd believed the apex could only be tamed by suppression collars, by cruelty. None of them had imagined what it would become if it chose to fight. Kale lunged for a final strike, blade raised high. Karath caught the weapon mid-arc, claws crushing it like brittle glass. For the first time, Kale stumbled. Elias leveled his rifle, heart hammering. He could end it right there. But Karath moved first. It didn't kill Kale. It slammed him to the ground and roared, not as a beast but as a declaration. The sound reverberated across the battlefield, freezing every soldier where they stood. Elias stepped forward, standing beside the creature, rifle aimed squarely at the High Warden. "Tell your council," he said, voice steady despite the blood in his throat, "the apex isn't theirs anymore. And neither are we." Above them, the elder ships still hung in the dark like vultures. But something shifted. The soldiers who had come to capture now hesitated. None of them had expected to see Karath stand over their supreme commander and spare him. Kale's mask flickered, voice ragged. "They'll burn you for this." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "Then let them try." Karath raised its head, eyes glowing like twin suns, a living defiance written into its bones. The elder fleet might descend. The council might unleash everything it had. But the balance had already cracked. This was no longer the hunt of a predator. This was the beginning of a war. The ships above shifted formation, lights glaring down. Elias stood shoulder to shoulder with the creature that had once been called the galaxy's deadliest threat. Now it was something far more dangerous. It had chosen a side. And so had he. The roar that followed wasn't just Karath's. It was the sound of an empire beginning to fracture.